So here we are, the final lesson of this 10-episode series, and in this one we'll be adding some audio to the game. We will be using the Godot provided AudioStreamPlayer node, and we'll use this to add audio effects plus music throughout the game. We'll also see how audio buses can be used to apply effects to sound, such as compression and distortion. So with regards to audio, there's two aspects, music and sound effects. They're closely related though. In Godot, the same nodes and mechanisms are used for both. Also in Godot, at the top of all audio, there is sort of a channel that it's all played through called an audio bus. And at the bus level, we can also make additional effects such as amplify, compressor, or reverb. The nodes used to house audio files in Godot are the AudioStreamPlayer. Any given AudioStreamPlayer has a defined bus, which it will channel sound through on its way back to a speaker of some sort. Buses can be chained together in a hierarchical fashion, but ultimately the audio passes through the master bus as its final stage back to playback. So let's start off with sound effects first. For our first sound effect, we'll add just a small thud sound when a game piece is dropped on the board. You could easily record this even with your phone, just making a thud sound on your desk. Also, freesound.org is a good source for sound files, and I'll add a link to one of those files in the description below. First, create a place to store your sound in the file system, and we'll place ours at assets audio FX for sound effects. Then add your thud sound file there. Now in the tabletop scene, we add an AudioStreamPlayer node, and let's rename it to drop piece sound. Next, in the inspector, drag and drop your sound file onto that stream attribute for that node. You can preview the sound in the editor by checking the playing property. Notice that the bus property by default is set to the only existing bus we have now, the master bus. You can see the master bus if you click the audio tab at the base of the editor. We won't dig into the details of the bus at the moment, but we'll take a look at that a little later in the video. Now with the sound nodes placed into the scene, we need to wire the playing of the sound up in code. In the tabletop script, we react to the game piece being dropped in the onPlayer placed game piece onboard function. So that's where we'll implement the playing of this drop sound. First, at the top of the file, let's make a reference to the node and pull that into a variable. And then in the onPlayer placed game piece onboard, we simply make a call to the play method of the drop game piece node. This simple implementation works for us since it's a quick clip and nothing can really interfere with the playing of this sound. So now if we go into gameplay, we can hear this thud sound as the game piece is dropped onto the board. The particular clip here seems to be, in my case, a bit quiet. One way to fix that is to go into the inspector of the node, and for the drop piece sound, we can increase the volume dB property by 10. You can see other adjustments here, so feel free to experiment, but for this lesson, we'll leave those as they are. From here, let's move on to the menu scene, and let's add some click sounds to the menu button presses, which is very common to do. You can again record your own sound. In this case, I've recorded a mouse click and placed it in the Git repo, and there's a link to that specific file in the description below. So we simply place that file in our audio effects folder, and let's begin with the start menu scene. First, add an AudioStreamPlayer to the start game scene, and let's rename it to button click sound. And now for that node, let's drag the sound file onto its stream attribute. And finally, let's wire this up in code in a very similar fashion as we did with the game piece drop sound. Start out with at the top of the file, let's add our reference to that and call it button click. And then within the appropriate functions of this class, go ahead and call that button click's play method. Now you can test the start screen, and as you press the buttons, you'll hear that click sound. We have an issue though. You may have noticed when you click the quit button, your experience may vary, but there's a good chance you won't hear the entire sound. This is because the scene is being unloaded, taking the playback sound with it. This can be solved by waiting for that sound to finish prior to moving on to the next instruction, which is to quit the game. We do this by using yield to wait for the finished signal, the particular AudioStreamPlayer node. This is the same mechanism we used for waiting for animations to finish back in lesson 5. So in code, we see that call to yield here, and again waiting for the finish signal of the button click AudioStreamPlayer node. We don't notice this cutoff in the other buttons as they have a kind of a pause where they fade to black before they go to the new scene, but we should probably not rely on this fade always being here, so for consistency we should go ahead and put in those yields in those calls also. Now when you click quit, the entire sound will play prior to the window closing. Now you can do the exact same steps in the progress summary scene. First, copy the button click sound from the start game scene and paste it into the progress summary, and then implement its utilization with code. We'll fast forward through that here. Now onto the music for the game. We'll have separate music for the menus and for the gameplay. One source of music is the YouTube audio library. I've chosen 2 tracks, one again for the menu and one for the gameplay. Links will be in the description below, so you can go ahead and download those yourself. And you want to add these files to Assets Audio Music folder. Let's first add music to the start game scene. Similar to SoundFX, add an AudioStreamPlayer node to the scene. And in this case, let's rename that to menu music. For the stream, let's drag in the World Fair track. And as seen in the inspector, this by default plays through the master bus. We would like to add some effects to this track, so let's go ahead and create a specific bus for that. In the audio tab, click new bus, and let's rename it to music. Then select this bus from the menu music node. Now in the music bus, you can add multiple effects to change the playback. This won't affect the previous sound effects as they're going straight through the master bus and not through this music bus. In this lesson, we'll use compression to sort of balance the volume. And we'll do this little phaser effect to give it sort of a psychedelic sound. Feel free to experiment on your own though. Now let's do the same for the progress summary scene. First, add an AudioStreamPlayer node and rename it to music, menu music. Now for stream, drag in the World Fair track again, and again set the bus to music. Lastly, let's add music to the gameplay element. In the tabletop scene, add an AudioStreamPlayer. In this case, we'll rename it to gameplay music. Then for the stream, we'll drag in the traversing track. And again, we'll set the bus to music. In this case, for gameplay music, set the volume down a bit lower so it doesn't interfere. And we'll go down by -10, see how that works. Now all the music track nodes are added to their respective scenes. We need to trigger the music when the respective scene starts, and we can do that with the Godot provided ready function for each scene. It's the same process for each scene. We'll demonstrate it in the start menu scene. First add a reference to the music track node. Then in the ready function, we simply call that node's play method. Do the same for the progress summary and the tabletop scenes. And the music implementations at this point will be complete. When the scene is loaded, its music will start. Then when it's unloaded, it stops and the next scene's music will start. Now you have the basics for sound effects and music in your game. One final element to add would be a sound effect to pair with the game win animation. In this case, I've used a sound from freesound.org. Link again is in the description. And then let's go over to the game board scene. And let's again add an AudioStreamPlayer and rename it to game win sound in this case. Next, drag that sound file to its stream property. And let's leave the master bus set for default. Lastly, wire up the sound in the game board script. Again, setting a reference at the top of the file, and let's set that to a variable called game win sound. And then in the win animation, we will go ahead and play that sound. So now if we play through to a win, we now have the sound effect paired with the visual effect. And that's it. We now have the basics of sound effects and music for our game. It's probably the minimum expectations for those two, but from what you learned here, you can expand on that and really take it as far as you want to go. Also, we saw a bit of duplication in the code in this edition. Nothing too bad, but as your game grows, you might want to centralize some of the sound code in some sort of audio manager centralized class. If you're interested in pursuing that further, Kids Can Code channel has a great episode on this, and I'll put a link in the description below. And that's it for this course. 10 lessons taking you through the basics of 2D game development in Godot. I had a lot of fun making this series of lessons, and so I'm looking forward to finding something new to dive into. Feel free to leave a comment below with something you'd like to see. As always, likes are always appreciated, and be sure to subscribe and bell to not miss future episodes. So goodbye, everyone, and we'll see you next time.